We are back again for another round of Mythbusters. We've got to expose some haters, and some of them are so obvious that they don't even try to hide it. Some of these ideas are absolutely insane. Make sure you stay for the entire video because there are two parts to this story that we need to break down, and neither of them makes any sense. For some reason, I have to be the voice of reason on the internet because nobody else seems willing to speak up about it. The first thing we're going to talk about is the 8 lawsuits that were filed against Drake, Stake, Aiden Ross, and George Nguyen, also known as Grand Wizard. We need to go through what these lawsuits were about and why they're being dismissed so quickly. But before we get into the details, like, comment, subscribe, and hit the like button. Seriously, do it right now. I'm watching. Let's start by looking at what these lawsuits actually alleged. According to the claims, this was a RICO case, a federal class action lawsuit accusing Drake of using the Stake.us platform to manipulate music charts. The allegation was that Drake was artificially inflating his streaming numbers through bot forms, tricking platforms like Spotify and Apple Music into ranking him higher and making him appear more popular than he already was. The claim was that this popularity wasn't organic, it was supposedly manufactured. The lawsuit alleged that Drake and George Nguyen were using Stake's tipping and transfer features to move cryptocurrency around, conceal transactions, and ultimately fund these botting operations. According to the theory, Stake was being used as a funnel to operate illegal bot farms. Now, think about this for a second. Anyone with common sense, I beg you to consider this. Drake needed to inflate his popularity. During the physical sales era, he sold millions of records. In the streaming era, he's been one of the most streamed rappers in the world for over a decade, and we're supposed to believe he suddenly needs bots? There are no massive spikes, no dramatic drops, no evidence of bot purges. Spotify has never caught Drake botting, despite the fact that people have been waiting to expose him. So we're supposed to believe he's running this operation out in the open, even though he only partnered with Stake a few years ago. He was already one of the biggest artists in the world, yet somehow he needed an online casino to secretly move money around? Does that make any sense? Once these lawsuits were filed, let's look at how some media outlets reacted. A class action lawsuit filed on New Year's Eve suddenly appeared, alleging that Drake not only promoted illegal gambling through Stake, but also diverted funds to artificially boost song statistics on music platforms. Then the reaction started. People were already acting as if Drake's career was finished. Some commentators talked about sending axe emojis. Others joked that it should be a hammer, a nail, and a coffin. They claimed they hated seeing Drake go out like this. They said he was a great songwriter, that he had contributed great music to the culture, and that they didn't want to see his downfall. At the same time, they argued that Drake was ruining his own legacy and damaging himself in ways that would be impossible to recover from. But here's the question. Have any of these people reported on the dismissals? I don't think so. Anyone want to check on Drake's career? Because it doesn't look like a frivolous lawsuit destroyed his legacy. Not only did these personalities push the story, but countless platforms and websites jumped on it as well. Yet, after nearly 24 hours of news coverage, only a couple of publications reported that the case was being dismissed. Even then, look at the wording. They say things like Drake avoids. Words matter. These are journalists and professional writers, yet they avoid using the most accurate terminology because negative Drake headlines generate more attention than positive ones. But let's talk about why this lawsuit was questionable in the first place. Did you know that out of the 8 plaintiffs involved in the class action lawsuit, 7 of them didn't even have Stake accounts? And the one person who did have a Stake account opened it only 4 weeks before the lawsuit was filed? You don't find that suspicious? You really don't find that suspicious? So the next question becomes, how did these 8 people find each other? How did they all come to the conclusion that Drake, George Nguyen, Stake, DJ Academics, and Academics TV were all involved in some coordinated botting operation? Where did this idea come from? Who's funding this? Because someone had to pay lawyers.
Unless an attorney took the case expecting a major payday, there were still billable hours involved. So who's paying for all of that? That's why I picture these haters wearing hoodies with their faces hidden. Speaking of things that don't make sense, has anyone talked about that AI website that was referenced on Brilliant Idiots, The Breakfast Club, and during the debate between Charlemagne and academics? Has anyone noticed that the website is now offline? That site was presented as a credible source and shown to millions of people. Now it's gone. And somehow nobody has any questions. Nobody has anything to say. But I have another announcement. Drake's biggest hater isn't hiding behind a mask or a hoodie. He's doing it right out in the open. I'm going to play 2 clips for you, and I want you to ask yourself whether this sounds like someone who is balanced, fair, or even making sense. One of the claims was that Drake somehow paid the White House to use his music in promotional content. Yes, you heard that correctly. The allegation was that Drake paid the White House as part of some elaborate marketing strategy. So let's apply that same logic elsewhere. We've all seen official White House social media accounts use songs like Baby Keem and Kendrick Lamar. Did they pay for that too? Has anyone demanded a public statement denouncing those artists? Of course not. Then there was the argument that people were unfairly labeling others as MAGA supporters. But nobody invented those tweets. They existed. The internet didn't create them out of thin air. And the theories only got more extreme from there. The next accusation was even more unbelievable. The claim was that Drake was somehow funding efforts to get Young G arrested. If you're not chronically online, here's the context. Young G was questioned in connection to the murder of Draco the Ruler. Various creators, including Flacco and Trapo Ross, have discussed aspects of the case. However, none of that has anything to do with Drake. Flacco had his own issues with Munchie B, who has appeared on podcasts discussing events surrounding the situation. Yet somehow people are claiming Drake orchestrated everything because he was upset about a rap battle. So let's recap. According to these theories, Drake is secretly funding campaigns to get people arrested, paying the White House for promotions, manipulating streaming charts through bot farms, operating a crypto scheme through stake, suing labels, controlling political narratives, and somehow doing all of this while allegedly being broke. Which one is it? At some point, the contradictions become impossible to ignore. The delusion has to stop. And then, on top of that, we get veiled threats about how someone's house could be burned down or how they could get shot because certain people supposedly have real power. What part of the game is that? The behavior has become ridiculous. This has gone way too far. Why can't people just enjoy music? If you don't like an artist, then don't talk about them. I'm not even going to play the entire clip because I don't want to hear it again. If you truly don't want to discuss someone, then simply don't discuss them. Nobody is forcing you. But people keep doing it, and we all know why. Clicks, views, engagement. That's what this is really about. Let me know what you think in the comments about the lawsuit dismissal, the White House theory, and the idea that Drake is somehow funding campaigns to get Young G arrested. We've gone way too far with this stuff. I honestly don't know what else to say. Just check out the next video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and show some love, because common sense has to win eventually. Hopefully, that day comes soon.